Chapter 1744 Ming Yue. Old thing, do you dare to offend the majesty of Master Island Master? Give me my life. From a distance, an angry shout came over. From at the end of the street, a silhouette imposing manner rushed towards Sha Hu fiercely, shouting loudly while rushing, apparently a bit of an invitation for credit. The management of Gloomy Soul Island is extremely strict, and riots or uncontrolled things rarely happen. Therefore, these martial artists who follow Ming Yue have few opportunities to express their own. Today it was undoubtedly a good opportunity. The people who came to see this opportunity were ready to take Sha Hu. Ming Yue can be pleased, a good bottle of muddy Heaven pill is absolutely impossible to escape. So after hearing Sha Hu's roar, he rushed over here immediately. On the way, a heavy knife-shaped secret treasure has been taken out and held in the palm. It is also full of imposing manner. With the burly body, there is indeed a kind of if a person blocks, then kill the person, if Buddhas block, kill the Buddhas, the might of press forward. Sha Hu just silently stove in place, looking at the tallest building in the center of the island. There seems to be a yin bird's gaze there. Paying attention from a distance, looking at Sha Hu's gaze, and colliding with the in midair fierce sparks, the invisible force makes the temperature of the entire Gloomy Soul Island it has been reduced a lot, and many people can't help but shiver. The robust man who came with the knife didn't realize it, and rushed all the way to 10 zhang in front of Sha Hu. Before jumping high, the long knife in his hand struck a shiny arc, the corner of his mouth with a sneer. Old thing, your head, I have accepted it. Sha Hu turned his head slowly and carefully, and looked at the people. Under this look, the person who came here actually sucked in a breath of cold air, and a terrifying expression appeared on the face. The imposing manner of press forward is like snowflakes under the scorching sun, instantly turning into invisible, a weird ho-ho sound in my throat. He spit out, and the whole person fell straight down from in midair, his feet sinking deeply into the senior ground, staring at Sha Hu with a pair of eyes. His voice trembled. Sand. Sha Island Master? This robust man obviously recognizes Sha Hu. Sha Hu smiled coldly. Joan, if you haven't seen you in 100 years, you still don't make much progress. When the robust man complexion called Joan talked, angrily said, Joe has no progress, exactly what you said, but Sha Island Master you, how could you still be alive? Ming Yue said I was dead. Sha Hu sneered lightly, looking at Joan like an idiot. Do you believe what he said? Not only is old man not dead, he is still alive and moistured. Today is to take the head of Ming Yue to vent the hatred of old man. Joan's face is twisting and uncertain. Although frightened, he still insists on his attitude. Sha Hu, less wishful thinking, Ming Yue Island Master has grown in strength over the past 100 years. You were not his opponent back then, and you are still not today. Obediently surrender. Follow Joe to see the Island Master, maybe you can escape, otherwise. What else? Island Master could defeat you 100 years ago, 100 years later, you are still not an opponent. Zhou and Shen shouted. Sha Hu laughed. Idiot, Ming Yue, could it be that I never told you that the reason why he was so good back then was because he used poison? Old man is now returning in a swirl of dust, he will definitely not give him a chance. He didn't bother to pay attention to Joan anymore. Instead, he looked at the tallest building and whispered, Ming Yue, if you have no guts come down to fight with old man, then old man will go up. The words are over, Sha Hu's figure is vertical, and a dozen zhang high leaps out, approaching the center of the island like a big peng spreading his wings. Wishful thinking. All around suddenly there was an angry shout. At least a dozen martial artists wrapped in a dark red light burst out of the crowd and intercepted Sha Hu. The dark red light rays outside the body of these martial artists are a clear sign of vigorous qi and blood, and from the strength of the rays of light, it can also be inferred that the qi and blood are full and weak. Some Gloomy Soul Island martial artists that Yang Kai encountered before were either too low in strength or lacking real ability, so they did not show signs of this kind of, but at this moment, they are learning the true nature of Sha Hu after their identities. The dozens of powerhouses on Gloomy Soul Island didn't even care about hiding themselves, and they used their full strength. Sha Hu ignored the pincers of the dozen or so people, staring coldly at the front, unemotional, fearless, and killing intent. A dozen people were overjoyed at the complexion. Everyone desperately urged the power of own within the body to perform killing strikes and cover Sha Hu. But before their killing strike hit, a young man appeared strangely behind Sha Hu, hovering quietly in midair, just like controlling air flight. Faced with the fierce flanking attack of a dozen people, the young man still smiled serenely. After they got close enough, he slammed his fists out quickly. In mid-air, one after another boxing shadow, like a strong wind and shower, pouring out, blasting towards all directions. More than a dozen silhouettes, the dark red light bursts on their bodies burst like bubbles. Everyone was hit hard and flew back amid screams and exclamations. The human body burst open in mid-air. Boom tilde boom tilde. The remaining survivors fell into the houses in the vicinity, smashing the houses out of large holes one after another, bleeding. There are pieces of internal organs in the fresh blood, which fall to the ground and the vitality is dim. Thousands of onlookers were in an uproar, and their eyes looked at the young people who were still floating in mid-air in horror. Everyone's eyes were full of horror. The dozen or so people who shot at Shah Hu just now are all powerhouses with surnames on gloomy Soul Island. No one knows how strong they are in the outside world, but in this gloomy Soul Island, each of them is enough to rank in the top 100. They are the capable men of Ming Yue. In the face of this youth's offensive, more than a dozen people were killed and injured. No one could get up. It can be said that the entire army was wiped out. Who is this young man? Why have you never seen it before? Compared with this young man, Shah Hu's name is already known to many people. In gloomy Soul Island, it is not only Joan who recognizes Shah Hu. Among the martial artists onlookers, there are many who remember it for a century. The former Shah Hu Shah Island master. 1 past 10, 10 past 100. Soon, the martial artist of the entire gloomy Soul Island knows what the situation is. It is the former island master who is coming to avenge the current island master. This is an extremely rare drama, no one wants to miss it. But the young man who just showed off divine might was in front of him. No one dared to chase after him to watch the excitement. Those martial artists who were subordinate to Ming Yue did not dare to move in the slightest. The tragic situation of a dozen people before vividly, there is still a weak and miserable howling in their ears. As long as they don't want to die, they dare not touch Yang Kai's mold. Yang Kai glanced at all around and laughed at he authentically. Old Shah wants to challenge Ming Yue. It's good for you to look at from a distance. If you don't have long eyes and dare to come forward, don't blame Yang. It's ruthless. In normal times, no one would take care of such a little-known young man who said this kind of, but after he repelled the combined blow of a dozen powerhouses, this is nothing short of absolute majesty. No one dared to provoke. Those martial artists who watched the lively martial artists were all stood in place from a distance, looking up, wondering about the stronger and weaker between the former island master and the current island master. In the center of the island, a great battle has clearly broken out. Shah Hu's loudly shouted anger passed far away, seeming to be the rise of killing, even if it's far away from a dozen or more li. The domain of force caused by the collision can also be transmitted clearly, and the explosion and tremor of the air poured into the eardrum, making people excited and terrified. Yang Kai stood in place for a while, and pointed out a principal mark on the ground, and then walked towards the battlefield without looking back. Even after he left, no one dared to cross the principal seal mark. He could only watch the shocking battle over there from a distance. Even though he didn't see it really, he could only endure the anxiety in his heart. A dozen or more li's distance, Yang Kai has arrived in just 10 breaths. Beneath the tallest building in the center of the island, there are already some bloody corpses lying down, apparently killed by Shah Hu. There are other martial artists standing not far away, their expressions closely watching in surprise. They did not dare to intervene at will. When Shah Hu first arrived here, he killed a few people with the force of Leiting, and established the image of the majestic owner. These people only want to die. We'll go to trouble Shah Hu. Now, only Ming Yue is fighting Shah Hu. Yang Kai didn't pay attention to those powerhouses watching the battle, and cast his gaze to Ming Yue. This is a refined in manner, quite a middle-aged person from Aura, dressed like a Confucian scholar, with a temperament similar to Great Elder Mo Yu from Clean Sky Sect. But his flesh body power is countless times stronger than Mo Yu. The dark red light outside of his body is extremely thick, demonstrating the tyrannical power of blood and blood. There is the sound of dragon roar, to split heaven and apart earth. The rays of light outside Shah Hu's body are not inferior to him. When Yang Kai arrived here, the two people fisted, and the sky was dark, and one giant appeared on the ground. In the deep pit, all around the buildings collapsed, and even the most central building was swept away by a wall and leaned aside. Yang Kai looked at it for a moment and couldn't help raising his brow. Shah Hu regards Ming Yue as his life enemy, and every time he mentions Ming Yue, he is full of jealousy. It is not unreasonable. Yang Kai can affirm that 3 months ago, Shah Hu was definitely not Ming Yue's opponent. Judging from the strength of Xia Hu when the owner first met him at the time, he was absolutely persistent under Ming Yue less than hundreds of breaths. But in the past 3 months, Xia Hu has taken a lot of muddy heaven pill made by his own hands, and made a certain degree of breakthrough in the power of flesh body, especially compared to 3 months ago. It is strong, so it can be evenly matched with Ming Yue. The battle of the two people is so savage and mad, almost in the form of injury for injury. This style of play is most suitable for martial artists with a strong flesh body. Because the flesh body is strong and vigorous, the injury will not be too serious and recovery is easy. Yang Kai has used this style of play more than once to kill powerful enemies. But when the flesh body of the two people is balanced, this style of play can really only trade injuries for injuries. The only thing that determines the final victory is your perseverance and determination. At this point, Xia Hu will undoubtedly have an advantage.